joy today, and it is not hard when we are here with my friend Shana Tatum. She is an incredible nutritionist that has been part of my journey of authenticity. We just met recently, but I feel like our souls are connecting on such a different level. So
yes,
welcome,
ma'am. Thank
Shana.
you. It's an honor to be here today. Thank you.
So she is a registered dietitian and nutritionist, and she has a lot of accolades that I can read to you, which I will read later. But I want to tell you that it's not just about, most of the time we think diet and we think, okay, I got to lose weight. And your approach is so much more encompassing than that. It's really about a way of life. And what I have found so inspiring is that you are making eating an enjoyable journey that I feel like I can incorporate for a lifetime and not giving me antidotes for quick weight loss. And I think that's what the first biggest misnomer about nutrition.
Right. Well, you're a good student, and I appreciate that. You make it easier. But nutrition is so much more than just calories in, calories out. You know, people who are looking for weight loss oftentimes are trying to really restrict calories and are paying not much attention to how much protein or how much fat or how much carbohydrates they're eating. Really, the bigger story there is what is food? You know, food, we have so many ideas about what it is. It's culture, it's tradition, you know, Thanksgiving and Christmas and holidays. It's coming together over a meal, which is also something that's been different during COVID, is, you know, us not sharing meals together as much. But if we break that apart and know still that those traditions and those things have meaning for us, but if you really get down to what food is, it's chemistry. It's really just information that is directing the cells in our body to do all those marvelous reactions that they do that make you this beautiful woman that you are sitting here today. It makes our cell membranes. It makes the nerves that conduct messages throughout the body. It makes our sex hormones. It creates just all this dynamic repair and regeneration. And without food, you know, we're not living. So when we think more about weight loss, I do try to teach my patients to understand what is at the end of your fork is directing all of that amazing chemistry. It's not just, oh, this tastes good, which is a part of it, and we do want to enjoy our food, but it's really more basic in that we're learning about what those molecules are going to do for us. Is it really going to move us toward vibrancy, or is it going to push us toward chronic disease? Which, you know, in America now, we're somewhere around 66% of the population that is either pre-diabetic or diabetic. And that is kind of a gateway disease to chronic kidney disease, stroke risk, cardiovascular disease, things that we don't want to have going on in the body.
And the main thing that I've taken away from my journey at Sydenham Clinic that I never really digested before was that it's not any one thing. My husband Rob likes to say that you can't work out enough to control what you eat, but there's that saying too, and we're having Tony Talamini on next week, and he's a big part of it. Because I feel like we've had Dr. Rice, we've had Anshul with the idea of longevity with Blue Zones, and then we've talked to Dr. Rice about the actual body and what we have deficiencies in, and then you come in and you look at I have low thyroid, I'm low on D, I have low testosterone, and there's some things that you can medically do, but there's also some things that we can do with our diets. But it has to be in conjunction with sleep is one of the most important things. And I've been talking about this Aura ring.
Yes.
I think I need to start selling Aura rings in my store.
At your shop? Yep.
We should, because it's like a piece of jewelry that makes you beautiful on the inside because you understand. So tell a little bit about these factors:
Sure,
movement,
sure.
diet, sleep.
Yeah, it's really the functional medicine approach. And that's one of the things that I really enjoy about working with Tony is he has a functional approach to movement. And there's a lot of intersection in concept about the ways that we approach the human body. But in functional medicine, we are looking really at a whole systems biology approach. So, for example, with your hormones, while yes, there are maybe a few things that are imbalanced that we're regulating with some hormone replacement therapy, we also want to be considering, okay, what kind of cardiovascular effects are you going to be having with that? What also about your bone health? Because we know for women, when estrogen drops, the risk of osteoporosis increases. So we're going to be considering that. And also your brain health. What kind of cognitive changes do we need to really be looking for and supplying those nutrients in the diet so that as we start to balance your hormones, that those become less of a factor in your future of being imbalanced. So when we're looking at all of the body, all of these great body systems, they work together. We can approach that through the testing, like you talked about with Dr. Rice, the genetic testing, the micronutrient testing, and then the Aura Ring. That's another great tool that empowers you because, as you know, I could sit here and give you all kinds of nutrition recommendations, but you're the one who's going to have that behavior change. You're the one that's really going to put those things into practice. And I think tools like this, any kind of data tracking, can really be useful for patients. Even our laboratory reports can be useful for you to see that on paper that shows, wow, my blood sugar really is out of control. And I see what you mean about having more protein and healthy monounsaturated fats so that I'm not leaning towards a diet high in refined carbohydrates. So with regards to nutrition, that's one of the kind of pillars. But at the clinic, we also talk about sleep. You know, it can be so important for detoxification because we're seeing in research that even recently there's something called the glymphatic system in the brain that works its best at night while we're asleep, and that's where it's removing toxins. It's kind of doing the clean out. Well, we all want a clean, healthy, functioning brain. That's just one of the many, many reasons to get good sleep. But when you can see the data on the ring, see that you're getting the hours of sleep, that you're getting that you're getting to sleep quickly, that you're going through the phases of sleep, and even seeing sometimes your readiness score the next day, so it kind of helps you see how you need to approach the day. That kind of data can really go a long way. So that sleep is super important. There's a great book by Dr. Matthew Walker. I don't know if any of your listeners are familiar with him, but it is a great read to know about, to better understand all the benefits of sleep. So sleep is one, along with diet. These are kind of like if you imagine the tree, a beautiful tree of your health, and you have all these tap roots, sleep, and nutrition, as well as physical movement, you know, that every day we're moving our body in some way. And it doesn't have to be, you know, an ultra marathon. We were talking about that earlier today, but it can be these smaller bursts of activity throughout the day, walking the stairs, you know, that old suggestion about park far away in the parking lot so you're walking. It really is just constantly moving your body because unlike our circulatory system, our lymph system, which is part of the immune system to help clean out, it requires movement. You know, it's all this system that works with the muscles in the body. So when we're moving our muscles, we're activating our lymph system. And it's part of the reason that exercise is so important for us. So exercise plays a big role. And the clinic, you know, we talk a lot about longevity. And I know Dr. Rice talked about the blue zones last time. But physical activity is one of the things in each of those 5 areas where they saw this long health span. that physical activity was a big part of that. So making sure we find the right kind of physical activity for us individually, where our body is today is different from where our body was, early in life. And so those are the kinds of things I think working with Tony is good for us, is that he can really do that evaluation and see what functionally are the right activities, the way for us to move the body. So what did I say? Nutrition, sleep, physical activity, community, really important one. With COVID, we have seen a real change in our ability to interact personally with people, and even just the power of touch, how that stimulates cascade of things like dopamine and serotonin in the brain. Those things have changed since we've been in this pandemic. And so having being focused on finding these other ways to maintain our community, I think has been important for us to do. So at the clinic, one of the things that we try to do is originally was to hold these great events where we were inviting community to come in, and you recently had one that was a place for people to meet and talk about their health and share ideas. Some of that we've had to pull back on, but we're hoping now that we're moving into more people getting vaccinated and just the time of year, and that we also just have so much more knowledge about COVID and treatment protocols that we can start to offer more things to build the community. But community and our relationships with one another have a significant effect on our health.
And I've been talking about connection so much because I feel like that's the thing that I've had to readjust in my mind and really focus on how I can get that, because I realized for me especially I needed connection with people. And I've been looking at culturally, because when we met and we talked, I looked culturally, being of an Italian-Irish heritage, with the Italian being the most significant. Every time I walked into my parents' house, they would say, "Do you want a glass of wine? And what can I get you to eat?" And it's such a part of so many families' cultures. Let's talk about a little bit about that.
Ancestral diets has been something that's been, popular and then not popular, but I do think that it has some validity when we're looking at genetics. When we run the genetic panels at the clinic, we do, that's part of what we talk about too. We want to learn from all of our patients where they're from, what their ancestry is. And I think that it plays a big role. And when we look at the longevity research from the blue zones, even though each of these 5 areas have a distinctively probably different set of genes, some of the similar things that come up are those things that we talked about, a good diet, movement, community, things that we're seeing play out no matter what your background is. But I do think that we shouldn't discount the importance of that ancestry. For example, some of the literature is, when we have these discussions about should we eat meat or should we be plant eaters or how much fat should we have, I really understand why my patients are confused about nutrition. Is because there's so much conflicting information. And I think too, just the way the news is going these days, that it's not so much based on evidence as it used to be. And so we get these sound bites of, oh, don't eat fat, or don't eat meat, or you must eat, have celery juice every day. Then it's confusing. So when you look at the research and see, where the Inuit Indians would have a high fat diet, that probably with their genes was the right type of food and diet for them to have. But if we were to look at your Italian or Irish genetics, maybe not so much. And so I think we can't just ignore that family history part for what is the ideal food for us. And it's part of why we do personalized nutrition at the clinic is because you are going to be different based on your genes, based on your family history, but also based on these other things, how you sleep, how you eat. You don't spend all day in the kitchen cooking, and that's okay. But what are the foods that are going to be easy and convenient and still nutritious for you, so that we can design a food plan around your lifestyle? Because
Okay, I have to tell you the funniest story.
Okay.
So, Shauna and I went to HEB and we bought all these great new things, and we are going to walk through HEB with you guys because she gave me so many ideas to be creative. So I'm home the other night and I'm making zucchini pasta instead of regular pasta, and I'm adding the rosemary because I found out that would be good to add to my diet. But then I put the rosemary sauce that we bought together in there too, and it
was a little strong.
It was not good. And Rob comes home and he takes a bite, and I go, "It's awful, isn't it?" He's like, "Yeah, I think that you should move away from this trying to cook." So we can try, but sometimes it doesn't always work. But it was so funny. And last night, he loves, one of his favorite things is to pull out the refrigerator one night. He feels like he's saving money if we eat leftovers.
Oh, sure.
And he's like, "Okay, Danae, you're going to eat the leftover rosemary."
that's yours. He wouldn't take it, huh?
But what I loved is you were so understanding. Everyone knows I am certain about what I like in life. So nothing's different here. I meet with you and I'm like, okay, I'm going to have dark chocolate every day and I'm going to have a glass of wine. And you said, okay, we can find a way to work with that. And I thought, what? And then I called them cheats, and you said, don't call them cheats. This is about creating something that's sustainable for your life.
Right.
And let's talk about that, because that's a different viewpoint of when people think about their diet and nutrition.
Yeah. Well, I have to as a healthcare provider, you really have to understand someone's readiness for change.
Yes.
There's a continuum, and some people are not even in the they're in pre-contemplation, so they're not even really thinking that they need any diet changes. That would be my dad. But then there are people like you who are motivated and are ready to make some changes, but there are some things you're still going to hold fast to. And I think, red wine and dark chocolate, while they can have some ill health effects if you have too much of it, but a little bit of it is okay. There are some antioxidants in dark chocolate. Caffeine has been shown to have some positive effects in small amounts. There is resveratrol, which is a fantastic antioxidant in red wine. I would not say have red wine to get your resveratrol,
right?
But it is. But if you have
a glass,
yes,
and
right.
it's all about balancing the quantity of everything. There's so much research about that. I think that's one of the Blue Zone ideas too, is slow.
Yes,
that's what I think you told me that. Slow down what you're eating, because it takes a while. I think there's even something in my DNA that shows that for me it takes longer than the normal person for me to feel the food.
It could, probably could. And I think, we have such a fast-paced life. We are eating our lunch while we're sitting at the computer or taking a phone call and still eating. And it's a hard habit to break. I even don't do it every day. But when I do slow down, the benefit that I get is really immense, because there is some great work by a healthcare provider. Her name is escaping me, but it's called the 9 Hungers. And it helps us kind of walk through all the different ways that we sense hunger. We eat with our eyes. When we see food, it sends a signal to the brain to start to stimulate stomach acid. When we hear food, whether that's, something sizzling in a pan or just the chopping of carrots, it signals digestive enzymes. So when we can really slow down and, take in the beauty of our plate, because hopefully it's filled with a lot of color and vegetables and maybe some fruits even, that all tells our body and prepares us to receive all that nutrition. And then if you top it with a little bit of gratitude, of thinking about who were all the hands that actually were a part of getting this meal to me, you know, from the person who planted it, who harvested it, who was involved in the transportation, who maybe prepared it for me. That was a lot of people involved in this food that I'm about to nourish my body with. When we take that time and really can have some mindfulness, then we have the benefit of all that nutrition. Our body can absorb it. There is a change, I think, in frequency about us, and I think about our food too. So there's so many benefits to us really slowing down and be mindful about what we eat.
Well, I am mindful that Adam is here to help us. I did not give him a shout out before, but he is such a yogi, so centered in what he's doing. And I feel like there's so much, I was saying this before, but I have to say it now. Like there's just so much grace that goes out there. I feel like, and light that comes from him. And you mentioned frequency the other day, and we don't want to get too crazy for everybody out there because we're talking about nutrition. But guys, it's all interconnected. Mindfulness, choosing joy. I just keep going back. We've got to choose it. And I was listening to Joyce Meyer this morning when I was walking Grace Kelly. So I'm getting my nourishment of my soul, and I'm getting I'm out in the sunlight, getting my
vitamin D.
Thank God we have that. And then I'm getting my exercise. So I've got all these little, my type A, check the box, yay me. But she said, we have to choose to get outside of the pain or the thing that's not working for us and not just stay stuck in it. And there is something to just saying, we just lost our electricity 2 weeks ago and everything. And so that first meal we had, we were like, wow, we get to cook a meal. Wow, we get to take a shower. And if we all just kept a little bit of that with us, I think it changes so much about all of it.
Yeah. And if we all do just a little bit, you know, then the whole community
is uplifted in this journey of like grabbing onto everyone and pulling us all forward and upward.
Absolutely.
So you were not always a nutritionist. You have a personal story, and I think it's so much ikigai. So I'll repeat for those who don't know it. But ikigai is when you are passionate about something and you find something that makes the world a better place, and you are able to make it your occupation and be paid for it.
Right.
You get into a state of flow. And that's, to me, you can just see, this is not like you check in and you check out. You are Shana the nutritionist every day, wherever you walk. Tell us what you did before.
Yeah. Well, I had a great career in art. I was a commercial interior designer. I married a husband. Actually, of course I married a husband. I married an architect. And we met in college in an architecture class. And so we both had a love for design and art. And it was a great career. I enjoyed it. I started having children, but I was traveling a lot with my work. And so by the time our third was born, I just did not want to be away so much. So I stopped working and I became a full-time mom, which was a beautiful experience. It was a real honor to be at home with them. And as a mom of 3 boys, to feel that I had this privilege to share the feminine energy and the example with the masculine, that they really could be these future citizens of the world. That was an important thing for me. And so I gave it my all. And somewhere along the line of that, I developed an autoimmune condition. I had psoriasis. And it was interesting because I think the body speaks to us constantly. Oftentimes we don't listen. And for me, I had it in my scalp, and then it started coming in my face. It was all in my ears, and I had patches other places. But it was literally in my face, and I had to address it. And for me, it also brought some gut issues. And so I don't mean to be too much information, but I had chronic diarrhea with this. And the stress of, having 3 young children, my husband worked a lot. He was very successful at his job. And I have a very high expectation of my life. And it got to a point where I was losing so much weight because I just was not keeping food in, and I wasn't getting any nutrition, just all the vitamins and minerals. And so went to the doctors, and they said, yes, why don't you start this medication? And I really didn't want to start something to suppress my immune system. So I started researching about food and diet, and this was 15 years ago, before paleo and ketogenic diets and all of that was really so big. And I just kind of found some information, and I eventually found a practitioner that could give me a little more information and at least confer that, yes, your diet may be playing a role in this. Because before that, I didn't know that what we ate really had anything to do with how we felt. I mean, I knew if I ate a lot of sugar, I didn't feel so good, but so I started trying different elimination diets. I started feeling a little bit better, and I saw some improvement. I started taking some specific targeted supplementations to replace my deficiencies. I started really dialing in my sleep. With 3 young children, that's a challenge.
Not easy.
But I became aware of it and started working harder at it. I started getting focused more on the movement that I was doing, that it was more intentional, slower kind of movement. I got more into Pilates and some yoga. And then when I really dialed in meditation, it's like my body just came into sync. And I thought, good grief, what in the world has happened here? It wasn't me. It was all of these atoms and molecules coming together. And so I went back to school, and I started with just an anatomy and physiology class, and I was hooked. Just the awe of the body. I remember being in the class, and we would study one body system after another. And I think we started with skin. And I thought, oh my gosh, I can't believe the skin does all these things. And then we moved to the skeletal system, and then the kidneys. And each system, I just thought, oh, this is my favorite. I love this. And then we'd come to the next one, and I'd be, no, that's not my favorite anymore. This is. And that's why I love functional medicine. Is it pulls it all together. And then it empowers you as the patient, because it teaches you to listen, to really dig in and pay attention to what the body is giving you these messages all the time about how you're eating, how you're sleeping, even just our perceptions and our thoughts and beliefs about people. I mean, when you talk about connection, it is a powerful thing that we have the control over. All these things that I'm talking about, I'm not dependent on my physician to tell me, here's one pill for your ill. It's me being in charge of my sleep and my food and my thoughts and beliefs and my physical activity. I'm the one in charge with that. Anshal talks about health is by choice, not by chance. And it's true. It's really true. And so after I finished and I decided I wanted to get licensed as a dietitian, there was a kind of a residency. You have to do an internship. And I was at Bentab Hospital, which was an amazing place.
Oh, good.
Full of chronic disease. I saw everything. My first day, I had the pleasure of a gunshot wound. I mean, it was amazing the things that I learned there, but I quickly saw that clinical care was not going to be for me. And so I went ahead and decided I'm just going to start my own practice, and here I am today, sharing nutrition with you.
It's incredible. When I came to you, I'd been doing the keto diet a little, not completely committed to it. I never felt like I was really in ketosis, but I felt like it was a good path, that I could eat high fat, which really worked with what I was eating because I love cheese, and I could eat high protein. But I was probably missing out on a lot of vegetables. I wasn't looking at all of it. But I was fasting, and I've read so many great things about fasting. I try to eat from only noon to 8, and I know there's not a specific time, but there's so much biblically. There's so much about, I think, Eastern medicine with fat. There's so many different things. But it's interesting. I get a lot of emails from friends or texts that care about me that are, this is so bad for you. how could you do this? Can we talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I do think fasting has some benefits. A disclaimer, though, patients who are pregnant are not really good fasting candidates. Patients who have very high cortisol or who have, that's one of our stress hormones, who have some kind of dysregulation of that, they're not a good candidate for that because it can put a little stress on the body. That's kind of what is called a hormetic stress, where it's a little bit of a stress, but not, it's enough for the body to send out some reserve to take care of it, but not kind of tip over into a high inflammatory state. So those two groups particularly, and then also like type 1 diabetics, we want to make sure that they're not fasting, or if they are, it's under care of a healthcare provider.
Okay.
The population that does well is pretty much, most other people. The research is showing really, at least for good health span, kind of going back to that longevity idea, that you should have a 12-hour fast every day. So when you finish eating at 8 p.m., say, not to eat again until 8 a.m. the next morning. And that does some things in the body, like it lets your insulin come down, because every time we eat, insulin is the hormone that's sent out from the pancreas to get the glucose energy and take it to the cell so that it has energy. It's good for us to let that rest some. In a modern diet, we're eating, 6 small frequent meals a day. That's really not so good for this constant release of insulin. And especially if you're pre-diabetic or diabetic, we want to reduce that insulin response throughout the day.
Fascinating.
So fasting can be good. That 12-hour window is important. To move past that for more of the metabolic regulation, patients can go anywhere from a 14, 16, 18-hour fast, and then you have that smaller window of feeding. The challenge gets for some people who are kind of stuck in this diet mentality of calories in, calories out. I'm going to run off my cheeseburger. We want to make sure that reduced eating period is full of good nutrition. Because if you're like you've taken out breakfast, so that leaves 2 meals for you to be sure you're getting enough vitamins, minerals, proteins, good healthy fats, as well as fiber. That's the biggest pitfall I see people have with going on a ketogenic diet, is that they take out all this fiber, because grains and oats and beans, those are all higher carbohydrate foods, and so they're trying to lower carbohydrates, but those are also some of the foods that the microorganisms in our gut really like. And so we have to balance it and make sure that you're getting fiber from low glycemic fruits like any of the berries, that you are having occasional beans, that you are maybe even taking a fiber supplement if you're not getting it in the diet, because fiber is really important for your microorganisms, and they direct so much of our health that I don't think we even quite know that much. I mean, the research is showing we have something around 100 trillion microorganisms.
Wow.
I don't even, it's hard for me to get my head around about how much that is.
That number. So for me, trying to cut down on fat and cut down on my weight and build muscle, we've talked about that 4 servings of carbs a day is the right number for me. And we've been working with my Fitness Pal so I could record it. And there is something to the accountability of writing it down.
So tell me, what do you think about when you put that in? Do you ever think, oh, I wonder what she's going to think about this?
Oh, absolutely. I do. I think about it, and I think it's kind of like when you pay a trainer to work out, or you have a friend that you're going to go meet to work out. You're accountable to someone else. And I think that accountability is really important for my journey, at least. And it's helped me because sometimes I wasn't seeing things. I thought, okay, well, I can have yogurt now. And yogurt is great to have, but it counts as a carb. And I wasn't seeing that as, whereas if I had a choice between yogurt and berries, I'd choose berries with whipped cream because whipped cream doesn't have carb. So you help me understand if I'm going out to dinner, if I want to have chocolate and if I want to have a glass of wine, then I can only have two others.
It's really just learning about what foods are the right ones for you, and then you can kind of manipulate that throughout the day based on what you're saying. If you're going to be out, or if you know you're going to a celebration, and maybe your choices are going to be a little bit limited, when you can think ahead and plan for what your intake is going to be, it's a little bit easier, but you're becoming more aware of what foods are really nourishing you.
Yes, because I'm also one that I never sit down for lunch. I'm eating lunch at my desk, and I have noticed that it was always important to me from a connection standpoint to have dinner with the family. And with Bella's schedules, sometimes we're not able to do that. But it's also a powerful time to just sit and connect, and then to create savory foods, because oftentimes the lower fat foods or although it's colorful with veggies, it doesn't have a lot of taste. And I like the taste. And the other thing I like is crunch. I want to be able to eat chicharron. I mean, who would think that I'd be eating pork rinds? Guys, you can eat pork rinds. Is that crazy?
As long as you're getting in all those other good things too.
Yes. And that was something I thought was interesting when we went through the grocery store. You mentioned MSG and how, so it's not always best to pick the lowest fat or the lowest calorie or the non-fat.
Right.
Can you talk about some of those additives?
Yeah. So one of the things in our American diet has a lot of what we call pro-inflammatory foods. So the highest ones that we probably consume the most are the omega-6 fatty acids. You've probably heard about omega-3 fatty acids, like in fatty fish like salmon and walnuts. But omega-6, these are both essential fatty acids that we need. We need a little bit of the omega-6s. That is... It starts that pro-inflammatory response, which we need, like if we cut ourselves, we have a scrape. We need the body to react a little bit to start that process, but we don't want it to be chronic, which is what, if we have high consumption of omega-6 fatty acids, then that does move us into more of an inflamed state. And people who are carrying extra weight or have some of these chronic conditions, they already have an upregulated immune system. So we want to be sure in the diet when we can that we're reducing the omega-6 intake. And those are things like the highly processed vegetable oils, like vegetable oil, canola oil, safflower oil, cottonseed oil, soybean oil. If you read on the package of any of your chips or crackers, any of those kinds of packaged things, usually you're going to see some of those oils. It's hard to avoid them in everything, but once you start to have a little bit of idea about where they are and what they do, then you can start to reduce your consumption of it and enjoy more of the other monounsaturated fats, like from nuts and seeds, avocado, olive oil, avocado oil. Cooking with those two types of oils rather than canola oil and soybean oil and safflower oil is really a good step.
And I love the quote that you have on your website. It says, "Let food be my medicine and medicine be thy food," by Hippocrates. So this goes back
a long way. I mean, it's the way I think medicine used to be done when your doctor would really spend some time with you and talk about things and talk about what you're eating and how you're moving your body. And our healthcare system has become a place of acute care and a 10-minute annual visit with your PCP. It's hard for you to really get into all of these factors: your sleep, your stress, your diet, your relationships. It's hard for your doctor to do that in the system that we have, which is one of the great things I think, with the vision of Sydenham, is to be able to have this time with your doctor, your time with your nutritionist. have time with your physical trainer where you really can start to explore these parts of your life that with some relatively simple changes. I mean, would you say the things that we've been working on have been really hard?
No, I find them to be about choosing a lifestyle as opposed to choosing to be on a diet. I feel like anytime I say I'm on a diet, it's not, there's an end that's coming. Whereas these, I feel, I guess the biggest thing that I've felt is that it's given me grace and it's given me understanding. In part of my spiritual journey, I keep going back to these scriptures that say God will give you eyes to see and ears to hear. And so I just feel like everything's leading me to these same pathways. I need to create time for sleep. And I'm having a teenager, running a business, growing a business, running a business in COVID, running a business in an electrical power out. Like there's so many. And I used to feel guilty, and I still have moments of it because I'm Catholic, and that was kind of ingrained in us from growing up, Catholic guilt. But if I wasn't at work, it was, I feel guilty. And I still have a bit of it, but now I know, okay, I have to work out. I have to be mentally strong. I have to get my sleep so that I am easier to work with my team at work, that I'm not snapping, that I'm a better wife, that I'm a better mother, that I'm a better leader. And so many people say that they turn on their Instagram every day and they're just happy to see me happy. And I want people to know that some days I'm not happy, but I choose joy. That's what I said to you this morning.
Yep.
And sometimes I add a little cuss word in front of it too. Shout out to Jackie at the office because she knows that. But you just say, okay, I'm shifting my mindset. I'm shifting this. And it's beautiful, and I have this moment, and there's so much to be grateful for, and I'm grateful for this food, and I'm grateful for this opportunity, and I'm going to try to change by paying it forward, and so that's why I wanted you here today, was to share this, because I feel like there's little things that everybody can adopt, and I want people to know that it's not about right and wrong. It's about choices. And that's what I think is so hard, is we try to listen to the news and we try to read all these things and it's so conflicting that we have to know that we just have to discern what's right for us. Because if it's too difficult, we're not going to do it.
Right. Or we'll jump in with both feet and it'll work for 2 weeks and then you're burnt out because the changes are too hard. Some people will do that too. They're not sustainable. Right, exactly.
You can't run a marathon at your sprinting speed. You have to carefully step into it and feel like you're giving yourself rewards. I'm very much have realized my personality is someone that I go hard, and I go hard because I'm working for something. And oftentimes I've been working for the trip I was going to take, the next place I was going to go. And with COVID, I realized those trips weren't going to happen. Those moments weren't going to be there. And so I started dissecting, what about the trips do you love? What about that makes you feel fulfilled? And it was having great food and wine with friends and letting go and leaving behind my stress and being in the moment.
Yeah.
And there is no reason I have to fly to a different place to experience that.
Great awareness. That's great.
So I encourage everyone to really to take time and think about what makes you feel fulfilled in your life, because I think we spend so much time chasing things that don't really fulfill us. Although I do love a new handbag, everybody. So our time is coming to an end. Come to the Vintage Contessa if you want a new handbag. But tune in, join in on our journey of living the authentic life. You have helped me to find out so much more about who I am that I didn't even realize. So thank you so
Good.
much.
Oh, my pleasure. It's an honor. I've appreciated it so much.
And stay tuned. We will be going to HEB in the near future.
Great.
Thanks, guys.